Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about On God Will Crown Your Efforts. In a culture that celebrates results over resilience, visibility over values, and applause over authenticity, it's easy to believe that effort is only worth something if it leads to instant recognition. But this belief couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is, some of the most meaningful progress happens in silence. Some of the most significant transformations occur when no one is watching. Just because your hard work isn't being praised doesn't mean it's not producing something powerful. Just because it's unnoticed by people doesn't mean it's unseen by God. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about On God Will Crown Your Efforts. In a culture that celebrates results over resilience, visibility over values, and applause over authenticity, it's easy to believe that effort is only worth something if it leads to instant recognition. But this belief couldn't be further from the truth. The reality is, some of the most meaningful progress happens in silence. Some of the most significant transformations occur when no one is watching. Just because your hard work isn't being praised doesn't mean it's not producing something powerful. Just because it's unnoticed by people doesn't mean it's unseen by God. Compromise, these moments are not wasted. They are seeds, and while the world may overlook those seeds because they haven't bloomed yet, God already sees the harvest they're becoming. He sees the heart behind the habit. He sees the sacrifice behind the scenes. We often assume that if our work was truly important, it would be noticed. But some of the most essential work in life is invisible. Think about a foundation of a building. No one walks into a skyscraper and praises the concrete beneath their feet, but without it, nothing else could stand. That's what your effort is. It may be underground, unseen, and uncelebrated, but it's holding everything up. This is where our faith is truly tested, when we are called to continue without confirmation. When we must choose perseverance without applause. That's when the deeper work is happening not just around you, but within you. Character is being built, trust is being formed, and most importantly, you are aligning yourself with something eternal. Because effort is never just about productivity, it's about purpose. And purpose doesn't always come with a platform. There will be days when you feel like no one sees how hard you're trying, days when you feel like your sacrifices are invisible. But in those moments, you must remember effort is not transactional. It's not a currency that pays off immediately. It's a seed that grows in unseen soil. And just because the surfaces show results doesn't mean the roots aren't growing stronger. God works in the depths before he works in the heights. He honors the hidden grind long before he reveals the visible glory. This perspective changes everything. It gives you the endurance to keep going when others would quit. It gives you the clarity to see beyond what the eye can measure. And it gives you the faith to believe that every act of diligence is a declaration. I trust that this matters. I trust that I'm not wasting my time. I trust that God is not blind to my effort. Even when doors remain closed, when progress feels slow, and when recognition never arrives, something greater is unfolding. Your consistency is crafting a story of integrity. Your persistence is laying the groundwork for promotion, not always in public, but in purpose. Heaven sees what earth ignores. And while you may feel like you're working in the shadows, there is light coming. Not because the world finally noticed you, but because God always did. In the pursuit of purpose, most people are tempted to chase perfection. There's a deeply ingrained belief that we must get everything right, avoid every mistake, and present an image of flawlessness in order to be worthy of success or divine reward. But purpose doesn't come to those who live perfectly. It comes to those who keep showing up, keep learning, and keep moving forward in spite of imperfection. It's not your flawless execution that unlocks your calling, it's your faithful persistence. Perfection is a myth that paralyzes progress. It whispers that you're not ready, not good enough, not qualified. It holds people back from starting businesses, writing books, raising their hands, or stepping into what they were made to do. But the truth is, no one ever started perfect. Everyone who has ever walked in their purpose began as someone unsure, unpolished, and unfinished. The difference is they didn't let that stop them. They kept moving. Persistence is the quiet engine of purpose. It's the decision to keep going after you've failed. It's trying again when others have walked away. It's choosing to stay committed when it would be easier to retreat. Persistence isn't glamorous. It's rarely applauded. It often feels lonely. But it's in those moments when no one is cheering, when the progress feels microscopic, that something sacred is happening inside of you. You're becoming the kind of person who can carry purpose, not just taste success. Purpose isn't a prize at the end of a perfect performance. It's something that forms as you walk through the process. Every setback shapes you. Every obstacle teaches you. Every delay stretches you. And all of it is necessary. God doesn't rush development. He's not in a hurry to get you to platform. He's far more invested in who you're becoming in the process than in how quickly you arrive. Perfection looks for arrival. Persistence focuses on alignment. When you persist, you aren't just trying to get somewhere, you're trying to become someone. You're letting the work refine your values. You're allowing the effort to expose what matters most. You're no longer chasing quick wins, but lasting growth. And this is where purpose emerges not from the applause of others, but from the clarity you gain when you refuse to quit. There are going to be days when you feel off track, unworthy, and unsure. There will be moments when the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels too wide. And in those moments, perfection will tempt you to stop. It will say, if you can't do it right, don't do it at all. But purpose doesn't speak that language. Purpose says, keep going. Keep learning, keep becoming. Because it's not about getting it right, it's about staying in it. This persistence builds something in you that talent alone never could. It cultivates strength. It anchors identity. It grounds your mission in something deeper than recognition. People may see the fruit one day, but they won't understand the fight it took to stay rooted. That quiet endurance, the ability to keep showing up after disappointment, after failure, after silence, that's what makes you ready. Not for perfection, but for purpose. Purpose requires process, and process requires persistence. Every time you keep going despite fear, you're proving you trust something greater than your own ability. You're proving that the calling is more important than the comfort. And you're revealing piece by piece exactly what you were created to do, not through your flawless efforts, but through your relentless faithfulness. One of the hardest places to be is in the middle between where you started and where you hope to arrive. This place, the waiting season, often feels silent, slow, and uncertain. You've planted the seeds, you've prayed the prayers, you've put in the work, and yet nothing seems to be shifting. The doors remain closed, the answers feel delayed, and everything inside you wants to ask, what's the point of all this waiting? But while it may feel like nothing is happening, the waiting season is far from wasted. In fact, it's one of the most important parts of your development. Waiting has a way of revealing what action sometimes hides. When you're busy, you can mask impatience with motion. You can cover up insecurity with productivity. But when things slow down, when forward motion pauses, what's inside starts to surface. And this is where God begins to work not just around you, but within you. Waiting tests your motives, stretches your character, and purifies your intentions. It's not a punishment, it's a preparation. Many people associate waiting with inactivity, but in God's perspective, waiting is incredibly active. It's a season of hidden growth. It's the soil where maturity takes root. Think of a seed buried in the earth. Above ground, there's no evidence of progress. It looks like nothing is happening. But under the surface, the seed is breaking open, roots are reaching deep, and the unseen structure is being formed. If you judge the process only by what you could see, you give up far too soon. But growth isn't always visible. That doesn't mean it's not real. The waiting season teaches you how to trust beyond results. It pulls your faith away from outcomes and anchors it in God's timing. That kind of trust can't be developed in moments of momentum. It can only be formed when you're standing still, when your prayers haven't yet been answered, when your plans are suspended in uncertainty, and you choose to believe anyway. In the delay, you discover the difference between control and surrender is where true strength is born. Waiting also exposes our dependency on validation. When things are moving fast, when success is obvious, when recognition is flowing, it's easy to feel confident. But when everything goes quiet, when people stop noticing, when progress seems stuck, you have to ask yourself, who am I when nothing's happening? The answer to that question matters, because if your identity is built on momentum, it will collapse in the stillness. But if your identity is built on calling, it can survive any pause. There are things that can only be developed in the waiting. Patience doesn't grow in speed. Wisdom doesn't form in comfort. Humility doesn't deepen in applause. These are qualities that make you capable of carrying the weight of your purpose. If God were to give you everything you prayed for too soon, you wouldn't be ready for it. The waiting isn't withholding, it's a gift. It's giving you the time to become who you need to be for what's coming. It's easy to believe that time is slipping away when life doesn't move at your pace. But God is not constrained by time. He works outside of it, and He uses time not to limit you, but to shape you. Every moment of waiting is being used to refine you, to test your foundation, to deepen your roots. The world measures success by speed, but heaven measures it by strength, and strength is built in the waiting. The waiting season also helps separate what you want from what you truly need sometimes. We enter a season of waiting thinking we know exactly what we're hoping for, but as time passes, our vision becomes clearer. Priorities shift, motives mature, and when the breakthrough finally comes, we're not the same people who started the journey. The delay didn't just change our circumstances, it changed us. And that transformation is part of the purpose. There's a kind of work that no one claps for. The kind of work that happens in the quiet, when the world isn't looking, when the crowd has left, and the spotlight is off. It's the effort behind the scenes, the habits repeated without recognition, the decisions made with integrity when no one else would have known if you cut corners. These moments, though invisible to the public eye, carry immense weight. They are the foundation of everything lasting. Because what you do in the dark will shine in the light. In a world obsessed with visibility and performance, it's tempting to think that only what is seen has value. Social media praises the highlight reel, not the hidden sacrifice. Promotions often go to the most charismatic, not necessarily the most committed. It's easy to believe that if people don't see it, it doesn't count. But the truth is, the unseen always precedes the seen. The strength of any structure is determined by its foundation, not its facade. And foundations are always laid in the dark. The person who is consistent when no one's watching is the person who will be trusted when everyone is. That kind of trust doesn't happen by accident. It is built through quiet integrity. It's in the early morning spent preparing without fanfare. It's in the late night spent finishing what was promised. It's in the thousands of small choices that no one ever hears about, the things you could skip, the corners you could cut, but you don't. Because you're not working for attention. You're working for alignment. And alignment is what positions you for favor that lasts. The dark seasons of life, the ones where affirmation is scarce and progress feels invisible, are not void of purpose. They are sacred training grounds. They refine you. They burn away the need to be validated by others. They teach you how to keep going for the sake of the mission, not the applause. It's in the shadows that your character is revealed, and more importantly, where it is strengthened. Because character is not proven when things are easy. It's forged when no one else knows what is costing you to remain faithful. When light finally breaks and your moment comes, what you built in the dark will speak for you. You won't need to explain yourself, promote yourself, or convince people of your worth. Your consistency will echo. Your excellence will testify. The fruit of your hidden faithfulness will be undeniable. But none of that is possible without a deep commitment to doing the right thing when it's hard, when it's thankless, and when it seems like it doesn't matter. There's also a spiritual truth embedded here. God sees what no one else does. While people may overlook or forget your effort, heaven records it. Every act of obedience, every choice to do the right thing when it would have been easier not to, every moment of sacrifice that was never applauded at all counts. Nothing done in faith is wasted. And often the very things you think no one noticed are the things that position you for open doors in the future. There's something profoundly courageous about showing up when everything in you wants to walk away. It's easy to be consistent when the conditions are favorable, when the mood is right, when the results are visible. But the true test of commitment is not found in comfort, it's found in resistance. It's in the moments when your motivation is run dry, when the reward seems far away, when your heart is heavy and your mind is tired, yet you choose to show up anyway. That's the kind of consistency that builds resilience, shapes destiny, and unlocks favor. Pain often disguises purpose. It whispers that effort is pointless and that nothing will change. It clouds your clarity, numbs your energy, and feeds the lie that persistence is wasted when progress is invisible. But pain doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Sometimes it's the strongest indicator that you're exactly where you need to be. Growth and discomfort are inseparable companions. The deeper the calling, the more resistance you will face. And in that tension between the ache and the assignment, you're being refined. When you show up in pain, you're not pretending the hurt isn't there. You're declaring that the pain will not have the final word. You're refusing to let exhaustion, discouragement, or delay define your identity or dictate your direction. You're choosing faith over feeling, and every time you do, something inside of you strengthens. It may not be obvious, it may not feel empowering, but deep within, a foundation is being set that can't be shaken by circumstance. Many people wait for their emotions to align before they take action. They wait to feel inspired, to feel ready, to feel strong. But maturity means learning to act, despite the absence of feeling. Some of the most important steps you'll ever take will be done with trembling hands and a weary heart. But that doesn't make them weak steps, it makes them brave ones. Showing up when it hurts doesn't mean you're failing, it means you've discovered what real strength looks like. There is a quiet power in endurance. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention. But it keeps moving forward, it builds a history of faithfulness. It sends a message to your soul, to your future, to heaven itself, that you are not easily shaken, that you can be trusted with what's next because you've been faithful with what's now. And faithfulness is not about how loud your yes is on the first day. It's about how steady your yes remains on the hardest day. The journey to fulfillment is rarely a straight line. It's filled with valleys that test your spirit and setbacks that test your resolve. There are days when the assignment feels heavier than your strength. There are seasons when silence from God feels louder than the promises you were once so sure of. And yet the call remains, keep showing up, because it's not just about what you're doing, it's about who you're becoming in the process. Pain has a way of revealing priorities. It strips away pretense and distraction. It shows you what matters and what's worth fighting for. If you can show up when you're misunderstood, when you're overlooked, when you're exhausted, and still offer your best, then you're not just performing, you're persevering. And perseverance shapes leaders who last. It cultivates a depth that cannot be replicated by talent or accelerated by opportunity. There's also a healing that happens when you move forward in brokenness. Every time you show up in the middle of your mess, you reclaim a piece of your hope. You remind yourself that the valley is not the end of the story, that you are not defined by your pain, but by your persistence through it. Some of the most powerful breakthroughs are born not in strength, but in surrender. Not in ease, but in endurance, and the very act of continuing, of showing up again when everything says quit becomes a declaration of trust, of courage, of quiet victory that's forming something eternal. There comes a point in every journey where your own strength reaches its limit. You run out of plans, out of patience, out of energy. You've given all you can, and still the mountain hasn't moved. The breakthrough hasn't come. The effort seems unanswered. In those moments, it's tempting to believe that you're failing simply because you're tired. That if you were stronger, you wouldn't feel so stretched. But the truth is, you were never meant to carry the weight of your purpose by strength alone. Where your strength ends, grace begins. Grace is not just a gentle word for forgiveness. It is divine empowerment. It is the supernatural force that lifts, sustains, and strengthens you in ways you cannot manufacture on your own. Grace is what steadies you when you're shaking under pressure. Grace is what speaks peace into your chaos when logic has no answers. Grace is what gives you the endurance to move forward when everything in you says stop. And it's often in your weakest moments that grace becomes most visible, because when you're finally empty, there's room for something greater to fill you. This is not weakness, it's wisdom. Strength that relies only on self is limited and easily exhausted. But strength that is partnered with grace becomes unshakable. You are not meant to operate like a machine. You are a human being with emotions, limitations, fears, and needs. And acknowledging those limitations is not defeat, it's the beginning of real power. Because only when you admit you can't do it all do you finally open yourself to the help you truly need. Grace doesn't remove effort, it multiplies its effectiveness. It takes your small offering and does something with it that only heaven can explain. Where others burn out trying to prove themselves, grace sustains those who simply keep showing up with a willing heart. Grace doesn't reward perfection, it empowers humility. It flows through those who know their need and are unashamed to lean on something beyond themselves. When you work from grace rather than for approval, your posture shifts. You stop striving to earn what's already been made available to you, and you start walking in the strength of something eternal. There will always be situations that expose your inability, tasks that are too big, responsibilities that feel too heavy, expectations that stretch you beyond your training. These are not signs that you're failing, they're signs that you're being positioned to rely on a source deeper than talent. These moments are not the end of your capacity, they are the invitation to access grace. And once you learn to depend on grace, you stop panicking when your own strength runs low. Because you understand now that this journey was never about proving your capability, it's about proving your trust. Grace doesn't promise ease, but it does promise sufficiency. It doesn't guarantee a life without obstacles, but it does guarantee that you won't face them alone. And that's a powerful truth in a world that often glorifies self-reliance and individual achievement. You don't have to be the strongest in the room to finish well. You just have to be willing to lean into the strength that doesn't run dry. Even when you feel overlooked, overwhelmed, or underqualified, grace is still available. It is the quiet force sustaining your steps, the breath behind your persistence, the reason you keep getting back up. You may not even be aware of how much grace is already carrying you. But every time you've gotten through what should have broken you, every time you've found peace in the middle of a storm, every time you've managed to move forward without knowing how you've witnessed grace at work. Grace is what closes the gap between where you are and where you're called to be. It bridges the distance between your limitations and your assignment. It lifts what your hands alone cannot carry. And while strength will always have a role in your journey, it is grace that guarantees you'll make it through the storms, the delays, the battles, and the battles in made purpose.